Can you keep a secret for 2,500 years? Because in 539 BC, something happened in Babylon that historians have hidden from you. The most fortified city on earth fell one morning without war, without violence, without explanation. The walls were impenetrable. The army was invincible. The gods were all-powerful. So why? Why the hell? Did the main gate open by itself when the enemy arrived? Why did the Babylonians themselves surrender their city on a silver platter? Why? Did the most powerful king in the world flee like a coward? And why didn't anyone tell you the truth about what really happened that day? Get ready, because what you're about to discover will change everything you thought about power, betrayal, and how empires truly die. I'll tell you. But first, let me show you something. Imagine a city so large it took a whole day to cross. Walls so wide that 2 tanks ran side by side on top. Gates so high they seemed to touch the clouds. This was Babylon, 200 square kilometers of pure power. The New York of the ancient world. Herodotus, the father of history, visited this city and was left speechless. He said the walls were so impressive he couldn't believe his eyes. And it wasn't just size, no, it was pure strategy. The city sat between 2 rivers. The Euphrates cut it in half like a sword. Any enemy would have to wade through water to get there. And if they did, they would have to scale 100-meter-high walls. Impossible, right? Over the past 1,000 years, dozens of armies have tried to take Babylon. Assyrians, Hittites, Elamites, they all broke their teeth on those walls. The city was literally invincible. But here's what no one tells you. On October 12, 539 BC, when the sun set, Babylon belonged to Persia. And do you know how many soldiers died in this epic conquest? 0, that's right. 0 deaths, 0 injuries, 0 resistance. The quietest conquest in human history. So how the hell was this possible? The answer lies in what happened inside those impenetrable walls. Because sometimes, my friend, a city's greatest enemy is its own inhabitants. But to understand how the inhabitants themselves turned against their city, you need to see what it was like to live within those gigantic walls. Because Babylon wasn't just a fortress, it was a world apart. Imagine walking through the living room door for the first time, bright blue, covered in golden dragons and embossed bulls. It was like entering a fairy tale, if fairy tales were real and cost a fortune. On the other side, paradise on earth. Wide stone-paved streets, navigable canals cutting through the city like veins, hanging gardens that defied gravity, if they even existed, because to this day no one is sure. And in the center of it all, the ziggurat of Etemenanke, the biblical Tower of Babel, 90 meters of pure human ambition pointing to the heavens. Early in the morning, you'd see priests climbing the stairs with incense, bread, and beer for the gods. Ah, yes, beer. Do you think the Germans invented beer? Not at all. The Babylonians drank beer for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It was more common than water, and it wasn't the thin beer we have today. It was thick as porridge, so thick they drank it through straws to avoid swallowing the pieces. Even the workers were paid in jugs of beer. In the adobe houses, families gathered in the central courtyard. Women ground grain, singing. Children ran barefoot. Men discussed business while smoking aromatic herbs. In the markets, the whole world came to you. Caravans from India bringing spices, Egyptians with gold, Phoenicians with royal purple. The noise was deafening. Merchants shouting prices, camels rumbling, cartwheels squeaking on the stones and controlling it all, the temples. Because here's the thing. In Babylon, religion wasn't just prayer. It was also a bank, a court, a city hall, and a newspaper. At the same time, Marduk's temple wasn't just where they prayed. It was where they kept money, tried crimes, registered contracts, and decided the city's fate. The priests weren't just priests. They were the true holders of power. And they were getting very, very nervous about their king. And do you want to know why the most powerful priests in the world were nervous? Because their king had committed the most deadly sin a Babylonian could commit. He betrayed his own gods. Nabonidus wasn't just any king. He was the man supposed to protect Marduk, the supreme god of Babylon. It was his obligation to maintain the rituals, honor the temples, and make the sacred offerings. But do you know what he did? He abandoned Marduk and fell in love with Sim, the moon god. Imagine the Pope becoming a Buddhist overnight. That's what happened. Nabonidus spent years excavating ancient temples in the desert, obsessed with archaeology, while Babylon needed a leader. He changed the prayers, altered the festivals, and ignored 1,000-year-old traditions. The priests were furious. The people were confused. The generals lost their direction. And worst of all, Nabonidus simply disappeared. For 10 years he abandoned Babylon and went to live in the Arabian desert, leaving his son Belshazzar to run the city, a ghost king ruling by proxy. Do you know the story of Belshazzar? The guy in the Bible who saw a mysterious hand writing on the wall during a party. Yep, that one. While his father played archaeologist in the desert, his son organized orgies in the royal palace, epic drinking sprees with the temple's sacred treasures, using sacred cups to drink wine as if they were ordinary glasses, one blasphemy after another. The army was demoralized, the economy was in tatters, the religion was in total crisis, and every day news arrived from the east. The Persians were conquering the Middle East. The Persians had taken Lydia. The Persians were coming here. And you know what the Babylonian leader's reaction was? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Nabonidus continued excavating ruins. Belshazzar continued drinking. The generals continued pretending everything was fine. Until, in 539 BC, a man named Cyrus looked at the situation and thought, "This city will fall into my hands like a ripe fruit." And he was right. And who was this Cyrus who had the audacity to look at the most fortified city in the world and think, "This is going to be easy"? A genius, an absolute genius. Cyrus the Rhine of Persia was not just a conqueror, he was a military psychologist, a master of propaganda, the Steve Jobs of ancient emperors. While other kings conquered with iron and fire, Cyrus conquered with words. He had a revolutionary strategy. Why destroy when I can absorb? Over the past 20 years, he had built the greatest empire the world had ever seen, from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea. But here's the trick. He did it by winning hearts first. When he conquered the Middle East, he kept the local leaders. When he took Lydia, he preserved the traditions. Always the same formula. Respect for local gods, preservation of customs, total religious tolerance, and it worked like magic. But Babylon was the ultimate prize, the last great independent power in the Middle East. In September 539, Cyrus finally made his move. At the Battle of Ops, on the banks of the Tigris River, he crushed the Babylonian army as if it were made of paper. Nabonidus's soldiers fled before the fighting even properly began. And then came the masterstroke. Instead of marching straight to Babylon with a thirst for revenge, Cyrus did something no one expected. He sent emissaries, not soldiers, but emissaries. And do you know what these emissaries told Marduk's priests? The song they most wanted to hear. Cyrus comes not as a destroyer, but as a liberator. He will restore Marduk to his place of honor. He will expel the heretic Nabonidus. He will restore glory to the sacred temples. The priests heard this and thought, finally someone who understands. Because look at the genius, Cyrus turned an invasion into a religious liberation. He wasn't conquering Babylon, he was saving Babylon from its own king age. And when news arrived that the Persian army was marching along the royal road toward the city, something extraordinary happened. No one rushed to the walls, no one prepared defenses, no one sounded the war alarms. Instead, on the morning of October 12th, something happened that would change history forever. October 12th, 539 BC. The sun rose over the golden walls of Babylon. The bakers lit their ovens as usual. The women went down to the canals to fetch water. The merchants set up their stalls in the market. A perfectly normal morning until it wasn't. Because outside the walls, a Persian army stood silently, waiting. Waiting for what? An epic battle, siege engines, weeks of bloody combat. None of that. They were waiting for a gate to open. And at 9 a.m., the Ingurunlil Gate, one of the city's most fortified entrances, simply swung open from the inside, without violence, without explosion, without anything. The Babylonian guards themselves opened the gates and walked away, and the Persian soldiers entered, walking, as if to pay a courtesy call. Imagine waking up in the morning and discovering that your city has been conquered while you slept. That's exactly what happened to thousands of Babylonians. Lugal, a pottery merchant, was organizing his wares when he heard a strange noise in the street. He went out to see what it was. Foreign soldiers marching in formation, but not running, not shouting, not looting. Marching in an organized manner, as if they were going to hold a military parade. He ran home, locked the door, waited for the shouting, the fire, the chaos. Nothing. Total silence. Hours later, he opened the window a crack. The Persians were positioned on the street corners, but not like savage conquerors, but like police officers maintaining order. The market continued to operate. The temples remained. Open, life continued. The only difference? The flags on the towers were now Persian. Nabonidus, the king who abandoned his gods, fled like a coward. He didn't even try to defend his city. He simply took his treasures and ran into the desert, leaving his people behind. Belshazzar, who was organizing yet another feast with the sacred cups, was captured without resistance. The hand on the wall in the Bible was no mystery. It was literally the end of the feast. But here's the most impressive part. 3 days after the conquest, Cyrus entered the city, not as a brutal conqueror, but as a savior. The priests of Marduk welcomed him as a hero, organized processions, and sang hymns of thanks. Cyrus, the master of propaganda, made a point of going straight to the main temple and making offerings to Marduk, as if he were the rightful king who should have always been there. The most impossible conquest in history was complete, without blood, without violence, without destruction. But the true revolution was just beginning. And this quiet revolution changed everything forever. Because Cyrus didn't just conquer Babylon, he invented a new way of governing. A week after the conquest, something unprecedented in history happened. The conqueror knelt before the gods of the conquered. Cyrus entered Marduk's temple, not as an invader but as a devotee, made offerings, recited the Babylonian prayers, and promised to restore all the temples Nabonidus had neglected. And then came the final masterstroke, the Cyrus cylinder, a decree engraved on clay that said things impossible to believe. I did not come as a conqueror, I came as a liberator. All exiled peoples may return home. All deported gods will be returned to their temples. All traditions will be respected. For the Babylonians, it was like winning the lottery. For the exiled Jews, it was the miracle they had been waiting for 70 years. For the world, it was the first declaration of human rights in history. Cyrus transformed conquest into liberation. But make no mistake, this wasn't kindness. It was pure political genius. Because ruling a gigantic empire with hundreds of different cultures is impossible if you want to control everything by force. But if you let each people maintain their traditions, their religions, their customs, they will work for you willingly. And it worked. The Babylonians continued their lives as normal. Markets flourished more than ever. Temples were restored. The city grew, but little by little, very slowly, Babylon ceased to be the center of the world. Important decisions were now made in Persepolis, no longer in Babylon. Young talent sought opportunities in Susa, not in their hometown. Tax money went to build Persian palaces, not Babylonian temples. Cyrus invested in the city, yes, and Daryl after him did too. Churches maintained the infrastructure, but always as a jewel in the Persian crown, never as the heart of power. With each generation, the Akkadian language gave way to Aramaic. Cuneiform writing was forgotten. The ancient rituals were simplified. It wasn't destruction, it was dissolution, like sugar in water. Babylon remained sweet, but it ceased to be solid. Centuries later, when Alexander the Great arrived there, he found a city still magnificent, still inhabited, but already more museum than metropolis. And do you know the final irony? The strategy Cyrus used to conquer Babylon, tolerance, respect, and cultural absorption, became the model for all the great empires that followed. The Romans copied it, the Arabs adapted it, the Ottomans perfected it. Babylon may have lost its independence, but its lesson in governing diverse peoples conquered the world. The city that fell without a battle taught humanity how to win without destroying. And perhaps, just perhaps, this was the greatest victory of all, and that's why this story fascinates me so much. Babylon taught us that no matter how strong you are, how high your walls, how powerful your gods in the end, it is the people who decide the fate of a civilization. The Babylonians chose to open the gates. The Persians chose to enter in peace. And the world was never the same again. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many Babylons exist today? How many walls that seem impenetrable until someone opens the door from within? Look, if this story caught your attention like it did me, do one thing, leave a like. Seriously, because content like this is insanely hard to research. And I'm genuinely curious to know if you enjoy this kind of historical immersion. And if you've made it this far, it's probably because you're the type who loves discovering the secrets they don't teach you in school. So subscribe to the channel because every week I bring you stories like this. Stories that will make you see the world through different eyes. Oh, and tell me in the comments which one impressed you most. The betrayal of the priests, the silent conquest. Or did you already know this whole story and I'm just late? I love reading your comments, especially when you know more than me. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story, share it. Because, let's face it, how many people know that the greatest conquest in ancient history happened without a drop of bloodshed? By the way, since you're here and clearly enjoy history, a video about what it was like to live in the Roman Empire at the height of its power is now appearing on your screen. It's the same level of detail, the same investigative approach. I guarantee you'll love it. See you there. M.